This is Actualized Freedom, straight talk on growing clicks and conversions on Amazon FBA from people doing it every day. Now here's your host, digital marketing acrobat, Danny Kenji Carlson.
What's up, guys? Danny Carlson here, and today we have a little bit different of a guest on here. He is a serial entrepreneur, and he has built multiple online businesses to 8 figures and has been on the Inc. 5000 list. So this guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to building online business, but he wasn't one of those genius guys who just figured it out immediately right away. One of his first businesses at age 29, he got himself $500,000 in debt with a restaurant franchise. And then through online business was able to dig himself out of that within 18 months. Pretty impressive numbers this guy has been doing. So really excited to bring onto the podcast, Mr. Jeff Lerner. How you doing, man?
I'm ecstatic to be here, Danny. I'm a little jealous since I found out you're in Bali, and that's always been on my bucket list, but hopefully COVID will lift and I'll get to come hang out with you. But man, I'm grateful to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, well, for those of you watching on video, Jeff's background here, he's in the super schwank hotel in Las Vegas with a mirror on the roof, and it kind of looks like the inside of like a yacht or something like that. So it's not so bad over there for yourself as well, Jeff. But the first thing I want to dive into is I really love hearing the background story of entrepreneurs like yourself who have taken some punches to the face and like really learned from that and been able to leverage that experience to have successful businesses afterwards. Because so many people, they take the punches to the face and they go back to their job or they just give up and or get like really depressed and stuff like that. So like, how did you deal with that first initial $500,000 in debt experience and then turn that around to keep going and keep pushing?
I appreciate the question. And yeah, man, I mean, everybody gets bruised and battered. It's like, if you're going to enter the ring, at least win. You're going to get punched either way. So at least fight and win, right? And that, you're right, man. A lot of people kind of throw in the towel. For me, entrepreneurship, I didn't even have that word for it when I started. It was more just, knowing thyself and knowing that I was a person who was, I don't know if it's because I was an only child and I got to call the shots growing up or what, but I just was not suited for being told what to do, where to go, what to dress, how to talk, when to talk, who to talk to. None of that settled with me. I had one job when I was 16 years old and I lasted 3 weeks before I got myself fired. So I at an early age, I had this, admittedly challenging reality of like getting a job is just not an option for this guy. Like I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to entertain it. But in hindsight, there's a real liberation in cutting off for yourself from day one, even the possibility of, I guess, what you would call a retreat. Like, I'm never going to retreat from trying to make this work, because for me, that other thing that is what most people do with their lives, it doesn't even exist. I don't even accept it as part of my reality, because I tried it just enough to know that it would kill me if I did. I mean, it would literally, I think I would have suffered at first a spiritual death and then eventually a physical death if I had just tried to conform to that box. And crazy as that may sound, it was the most freeing thing in the world. But it doesn't mean that you don't get your butt kicked. So all through my 20s, I was a professional musician, and even becoming a musician was a tactical decision to go, okay, what can I do? What skill can I develop? To get paid, but still control my time, be able to say yes to the jobs I want, no to the jobs I don't, and be able to go anywhere in the world, have a skill that crosses boundaries and borders and whatnot. And music is obvious in that regard, but you have to be really good. That's the other great thing about music, is like being a pretty good musician does not make it possible to make a living. You really have to be a great musician to be able to like consistently make $50,000 to $100,000 a year in most cities just playing gigs. You have to be a really good musician, And so I worked my butt off. I actually dropped out of high school shortly after I had that job, because I was like, school holds nothing for me, because it's just a path that leads to a place I already know I can't and won't go. So I dropped out of school, much to the chagrin of my parents, but I was able to kind of enroll them in this vision for my life where they said, okay, you make your bed as long as you're willing to sleep in it, we'll support you. And I just went nuts practicing the piano. And so I dropped out of school at 17, started playing the piano. I really hadn't played piano before. I mean, I took some lessons as a kid, but that's when I decided like, okay, I need to get really good at this thing. It took about 3 years. I was working professionally by 20 as a pianist. And I did that all through my 20s, which meant that I got to enjoy the feeling of being more or less free. I mean, I was free to go where I wanted, play the gigs I wanted, and do something that I loved and was creative for a living. But I also got to experience what it's like to be poor. I never actually ended up making more than about 40 something $1,000, maybe 50 or 60 if you counted the tips. But living in a major city, I lived in Houston, Texas, and making, $40,000, $50,000 a year, it's not much for quality of life. And I appreciate that there are some people that, raise families on that income, but I don't think we're offending anyone to say it's hard. Sometimes it kind of sucks. And I just didn't want to live a $40,000 a year life the rest of my life. And I was a 24, 25, 26, whatever, how old I was in my 20s piano player. And I was playing gig. Let's say I couldn't make the gig. I'd look in the union book at all the other pianists in town, and I'd call one of them and go, hey, can you cover the gig for me? And they go, yeah. And I was kind of in that upper level of the musicians in that city. But these guys were 50, 60 years old. And they were at the same place I was. Like, they were still making 40, 50, 60 grand a year, playing gigs, and no health care, no benefits, no savings. They're gonna play gigs till they die because they can't stop, or they gotta get a teaching job and deal with snot-nosed kids who don't want to be there. And it's a hard life. And so I was always starting businesses. I failed at 10 businesses in my 20s. I failed at, trying to flip houses. I failed at originating mortgages. I started a company to try to promote produce raves and promote parties. I had a booking agency where I booked bands. What else did I do? I tried MLM. There's more. I tried a marketing company early on. I tried selling coupons in college towns. I tried blah, blah, blah. I tried developing technology. I just failed at everything. But there's nothing else to do. I would fail. I would lose all my money. I would go play more gigs. I would save up more money. I lived really cheap and save my tip jar and go invest in the next thing. Finally, at like 20, I guess when I was 27, 2006, the banks were kind of insane at that time. You seem pretty young. You may not have been in the space in 2006, but at that time, the banks were kind of high on this mortgage bubble and this economic boom. And they were giving out loans that they never should have been giving out. And one of those loans was to me. I was a 27-year-old piano player with no business success, a lot of business failure. And they gave me over $300,000 to go open these franchise restaurants. And I had convinced this franchisor to give me a territory license to build out 10 stores in Houston, which I was just so in over my head to even attempt doing. I don't know. It was just delusions of grandeur. And long story short, in less than 2 years, it really only took a little over a year, the economy collapsed, the quote, Great Recession, the mortgage bubble burst, all my customers for my lunch deliveries dried up. And fall 2008, I was 29 years old with a total of $495,000 in debt. Over about $330,000 of that was debt that had been backed by the U.S. Treasury, because I got Small Business Administration federally guaranteed bank loans. And so when you default on those, you don't just owe the bank, you owe the government. And so it was the functional equivalent of being like $300,000 behind on my taxes, plus another almost $200,000 to other creditors. So, the U.S. government doesn't let you walk away from $330,000. You pay it, or they hound you till the day you die. So I was in a really tight spot. My wife was, at the time I'd gotten married. And that was another really hard thing about being a musician / failing entrepreneur in my 20s is I was able to get married, but I was never able to stay married. So it's my second time I had a wife. Like, I'm done with this guy. This is a train wreck. I can't tie my life to this for future, decades. And we're never going to have kids. And this guy's never going to be able to give me the life I want. And so a number of probably other reasons too. I wasn't like any kind of perfect soul, but so she's leaving me. I lose my apartment. I had to move out of my apartment. I lose everything. I'm $500,000 in debt. I end up moving in with her parents, which was super stressful and tense. But I basically locked myself in my room. And it was the week of Thanksgiving 2008. I went online, was like, okay, I think I Googled like how to make a lot of money fast, or like, one of these ridiculous things that we search for. And I found an ad that was like, basically I can teach you online marketing, and, some guy that supposedly made all this money, and he seemed credible. And I ended up buying his $395 course to learn affiliate marketing. And fortunately, it was a very legitimate training. I became part of a very legitimate community that went on to spawn a lot of really good marketers that are still active today. They kind of came out of this early community. It was called Carbon Copy Pro. And in 18 months, I paid off $495,000 in debt. And that was my first, there were little phases within that 18 months, but that was kind of my first big springboard into success. Was like this hard driving, roughly 2-year period where I paid off $500,000 of debt, turned everything around, got my divorce done, moved to another city. I moved from Houston to New York City and just kind of started a whole new life. And so that was, I guess 2010, when I got that debt paid off, and I've just been growing and going ever since. This year, whatever, I don't want to beat my chest about the numbers, but just keeps going up, man. The internet's an amazing place.
It really is amazing. And what also I found amazing is your ability to go through something so difficult like that, just like literally hitting rock bottom with your wife leaving you. You got $500,000 in debt, and it's just not a good situation. A lot of people will not find the energy to pick themselves back up, make that Google search, go invest in something that is like, at the time, if we're being realistic, like that was not a popular option. Like nowadays, people are a little bit more aware of online business models and legitimately, but like back then, it seemed like a scam, right? The only people looking at these things were like pretty open-minded people. So like, how did you, in that just like rock bottom state, how did you find the energy or the drive? Like, what was the drive that allowed you to actually go take those actions?
Well, yeah, first of all, let me speak to the whole scam thing. Yes, when I told people, I was like, they're like, what are you going to do? I was like, I'm learning to become an internet marketer. And I remember specifically one friend being like, I don't know what that is, but I wouldn't tell too many people. Like it sounds like you're just going to start, stealing money or getting in some Ponzi scheme or something. And but I at the end of the day, part of it was I went to an event. So I got involved in late November. In March of the next year, March of 2009, I went to this event in Lake Tahoe. It was a marketing conference from people that were either learning or already had succeeded. And I got to meet a bunch of guys that were guys like you and me, just like normal guys that live in Bali or hang out in Vegas hotels. And as long as they have their laptop, they can make money. And it became so real that it didn't really matter what anybody else thought, because frankly, none of them were too keen on being my friend anyways, because I was now like broke, depressed, overweight, twice divorced, loser musician Jeff. And like, they're like, it's not like I was looking to them for a lot of moral support. So why would I be looking to them for a lot of advice? And it just became really real. As far as the resilience, I've done enough of these interviews, and that piece of my story really resonates with people, that like, I just kind of don't stop. Here's what I'll say is, it's all cliches, except they're not cliches because they're my actual life. And I've built now a 5-year base of experience I've been an entrepreneur since I was 16 years old when I quit that job, or I got fired. I've got a 25-year base of experience that says this is not a cliche, what I'm about to say. And the reality is, your circumstances, they don't define you. They just don't. When I was 17 years old, shortly after I decided I wanted to be a self-determined person, i.e. not get a job and take orders from other people, I read a book called The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. And the protagonist of that book, Howard Rourke, was this visionary, creative, misunderstood person who fought his whole life to do it his own way, but ultimately was validated as the genius and the visionary that he was. And in that case, the context was architecture. There's a million great stories. Some of them are fiction and some of them are nonfiction, of people that do this. Go read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, one of the preeminent psychologists of the 20th century. The guy spent 4 years in Auschwitz and was completely stripped of his dignity and saw the most horrific things that we've ever seen. Anybody that feels sorry for themselves because they got their Facebook ad account banned, like, go read that book. Come on. And yet he ended up inventing logotherapy and creating a body of work that helped probably hundreds of thousands of people achieve a happier quality of life. Like, circumstances. And it's, I mean, you might be like, oh, well, it's easy for you, Jeff, to say in hindsight now, but I said it when it was the hardest it would ever be to say it. I really did. And that's all I can attribute it to, man, is failure is what happens when you stop. And so I never failed.
And did you always have a clear vision of where you wanted to go? Like, was there some vision you're like, yeah, maybe I'm super poor right now, things are not going my way, but this is like, I want to be wealthy. I want to just have this higher level of life. And that's just like the vision that you're driving towards, right? You weren't trying to go and make some $40,000-$50,000 a year salary and just like check into the office every single day. You had a specific vision, right?
Yeah. I'd love to say that. Here's the thing. I had a feeling. I wouldn't say it was as clear as a vision. Like, now I do all the, sort of metaphysical law of attraction kind of stuff. If I want something, I print out a high res picture of it and I study it and I visualize it and I go after. But at the time, I didn't have any kind of structure. There was no, there was. I mean, you could buy Tony Robbins CDs or DVDs or the VHS tapes and stuff. I mean, you could get that stuff, but I didn't have any of that. I had two things. I had a feeling that I was created, and I don't think this is unique to me. I just had maybe my belief in it makes me different, but the truth of it, I don't think is any different for anyone. I believe that I was created for a great life. I just did. I just always have. Because I saw other people did it. And a big part of that is when I was in my early 20s, I played piano. I got in with this one booking agency, and I was booked to play piano in the homes of multiple billionaires. Like, Houston is a really, really wealthy city because of the oil and gas industries. And I literally played piano in the home of like Bob McNair, who owned the Houston Texans. And, he died in 2017 with a $3 billion net worth. I played piano in the home of Drayton McClain, who used to own the Astros. I played piano in the home of Tillman Fertitta, who now owns the Rockets. He's the guy on that $1 Billion Buyer show. I played piano in the home of Jim Crane, who later bought the Houston Astros, who started Siva Logistics. And a lot of, those are just the billionaires. I mean, I was playing in the homes of CEOs, 100 millionaires, top level executives, probably 50 homes I played in that were, $5-10 million homes plus. And I'd walk in and they'd be like, oh, the piano's over there. And it's like a $150,000 Steinway or Bosendorfer, and I'd sit down and play. So I had even though I was poor, I had a big abundance mentality. Like, there's a lot of money out there. And I would always get to those gigs early so that I could try to steal a little FaceTime with the host. And I remember asking these guys, like I asked, Charles Butt, who owns HEB, one of the biggest grocery store chains in Texas. I was like, dude, like what does it take to succeed at this level? And he told me. I remember, and Bob McNair, I asked him the same thing. Bob McNair, he's a guy like Ray Kroc. Have you seen The Founder? The guy who started McDonald's?
Oh yeah, so, I read his book. It's great.
Yeah. So Bob McNair is just the same type of guy. He failed again and again and again and again. He didn't even get a hit till he was in his 40s. But when he did, he hit $1 billion. And Bob McNair told me, he's like, yeah, you know how they say, how Einstein says that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results? He's like, I was absent the day they taught that. And I never got that memo. And so I just kind of kept doing it. And guess what? Sometimes Einstein is wrong. So I just had this belief because I had met these people and I knew that this was out there, even though it didn't necessarily apply to me. I didn't see myself as exclusive of it or any different from it. So I had that going for me from a belief standpoint. And then also, I don't even remember exactly what the original question was, but here, the other thing that I know is that I can sit down, and again, I don't think this is unique to me. I can sit down, I can get insanely focused on something, and I can sustain that focus for longer than most people do. And I can master a really hard thing. And I knew that because when I was 17 years old, I was so repulsed by the idea of having to get a job that I basically taught myself to play professional level piano in 3 years, 8 or 10 hours a day, dropped out of school, went into a cave, total focus. And I did something that, to this day, I can sit down at a piano and people assume that I'm some kind of child prodigy or something. I'm not. I built those skills when I was already physically an adult at 17 with an intense level of discipline. And I got to say, I think all of that, again, is driven in part by, in marketing, we talk about people either move away from pain or towards pleasure, right? But the deeper drivers are always moving away from pain. I had so much pain associated in my own mind with an average, typical cookie cutter life that there was no length I wouldn't go to get to the pleasure, even if it took, in my case, 20 years.
Yeah, well, what you just said there is pretty much the exact same situation with me. And actually very similar. When I was probably about the same age, I think 16 or 17, I had a very similar mindset towards just general 9-to-5 jobs in that whole world. It just like didn't seem like an option to me at all. So my path actually was to do the exact same thing as you, but with drumming. And so I took up drumming. Really? And the amount of hours I would spend in front of the drum kit, just doing rudimentary exercises and things like that, was just absolutely immense. And so it's very interesting. We have a very similar story in that regard.
Yeah, man. How many paradiddles have you done in your life?
Paradiddles. Oh, many countless hundreds of thousands of paradiddles.
Yeah, millions of paradiddles, right? I mean, I get, yeah. And here's the thing. So like Dan Henry, former guitar player, John Benson, former world-class bass player. Like I could go down the list. I've interviewed these guys. There's actually a lot of us, man. There's a big correlation between music and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And I want to touch on another thing you said there as well, which is moving away from pain is a bigger motivator than moving towards pleasure. And I've certainly found that to be true. And there's this whole idea just floating around the kind of personal development space or entrepreneurship space that, passion is going to be the thing that drives you. And like, you need to find the thing that's just like really the best thing that lights you up in the world. And that's what's going to motivate you to do what you want to do. I mean, my experience has been the exact opposite of that. It's been like the thing that is painful in my life is the thing that is pushing me towards, improving whatever that is in my life that has that pain. And the times in my life where I've had the most pain is when I've been working the hardest to drive towards whatever it is I want to drive towards.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Navy SEALs. Honestly, in a different life, I think I would have gone out for the SEAL teams. That just wasn't my path. And I don't know that I'm built for it, but like, I love gruelingly hard stuff, man. And I'm like a skinny guy. I'm not an athlete. I'm not built for it, but I love like hard, painful workouts. And I love, spending 10 hours at the piano because I agree with you, man. Pleasure and passion, and they don't call it pleasure because that sounds too indulgent or hedonistic. Oh, follow your passion. No, man, create a mission for your life and get the damn mission done, whatever it takes, like the SEALs do. And for most of us, I think, it's evolved a little bit. My mission at first was what I didn't want for my life. Now my mission is what I want to do with my life, the impact I want to have with my life. But it's the same thing. It's about executing the mission at all costs. And long after you may have lost your passion, frankly. When you're behind enemy lines with fighting the Taliban, you're not waking up every day going like, well, what am I passionate about today? No, man, do the mission or die. Right? That's how entrepreneurs kind of have to approach it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. And from my experience, like the whole follow your passion argument just kind of died in my head when I guess I would have been about 24 years old. And my take two at trying to escape this 9-to-5 thing was I want to be a professional downhill skateboard racer, which is, like extreme riding longboards down the road and like racing against other people. And I actually achieved that vision at about 24, 25 years old. And I was traveling all through Europe and Asia and, creating videos and all this stuff. And very quickly, like within the first year of me being full on professional, I just realized that it felt like another 9-to-5 job, that it didn't feel any different than me working as a carpenter in the pouring Vancouver rain, which I hated so much. And I had essentially killed my passion, the thing that I was originally passionate about, by then following my passion. All the advice that all the self-help gurus would give you had effectively killed that passion and turned the passion into just another job. And that was the day where I just realized that, like, okay, so this clearly is not the right way to think about things. Like, I'm not going to continue to systematically kill all my passions by trying to make a living off of them. And most passions, if you're like me anyways, most of my passions are not very lucrative at all. Like I made abysmal amounts of money as a downhill skateboard racer, and like you have to pretty much live in a van for half the year, traveling around the world. So why not just do something that is going to make you a lot of money, and then you can afford to do the things that you're passionate about and keep them as your passions, not as like trying to turn all of your passions into a monetary vehicle.
I couldn't agree more. You know, I was really passionate about music when I started, and I am today. But from the time I said, okay, music is not giving me the life I want, I'm going into something else, until it's probably been in the last 2 or 3 years, you know, so that was about almost a 10 years, at least eight plus years that I literally didn't touch a piano. I totally lost my heart for it. And now I'm able to circle back to it totally on my own terms. I have a beautiful piano. It sits in my office. I don't get paid to do it. Sometimes I play on like an Instagram live or whatever, but for the most part, I'm just doing it for myself. And every morning I go in for an hour, and it's maybe my favorite part of my day. You know, the passion's back. But for you, I mean, I don't know, skateboarding's a little different on an aging body, but it might come back in 10 years. But totally, you're right. Trying to make a living out of your passion is a great way to kill your passion.
Yeah, no, it's something I just hammer home all the time. It's like, it just annoys me that that's such a big kind of thing that people say all the time. You got to follow your passion. You got to find the one thing that's just going to be the most passionate thing that you work on. So really interesting to hear your take on that. Another thing I want your take on here is the 3 Ps of excellence. So from what I understand, this is just what you've understood through your 25 years of entrepreneurship as, you know, the 3 drivers that are important for having excellence in all areas of your life. So tell us a bit about the 3 Ps of excellence.
Yeah. So the way I describe this is like, I'm fundamentally, I'm pretty simple. Like, I'm driven. I work hard. I'm intellectually capable of mastering pretty hard things inside of a narrow lane. But like, when life gets too spread out, I start to implode. Like, I cannot juggle a disparate thing. So I have to have super simple, heuristics. I call them heuristics, or like, mnemonics, or just little hacks and tricks and things I can hone in on to keep myself centered and focused, or else I'll get spread in a million directions. So I'm always trying to simplify truth to be so accessible that, again, for the, behind enemy lines fighting the Taliban, right? Like, when the bullets are whizzing, my truths have to be so simple that I'll remember them even when I'm flooded with adrenaline and I'm flooded with, all chaos and fear and stress. And like, even in those moments, my truths have to be so simple that I can recall them. That's where I came up with the 3 Ps. Like, we all know that we should work out, and we all know that we should eat better. We all know we should be nice to our loved ones. We all know we should communicate more effectively and with empathy. And we all know that we should work on our business. We all know we shouldn't watch reruns of Seinfeld for 4 hours a day. And like, we all know these things. But why is it so hard? To me, it's because it's all these things we have to remember that we're either supposed to do or not supposed to do. So I just distilled it down to 3 Ps: physical, personal, and professional. Be excellent every day, physically, personally, and professionally. Do one thing every day that adds a balance to your life account, physically, personally, and professionally. And then basically all you have to do is bookend that practice with an intentional morning routine and a nightly review and pre-planning of the next day. And that's it. That's my life. There's a lot of other stuff that fills in the details, but I will say this: you follow me around for a week, a month, a year. I would say right now, I probably haven't missed a day in 5 years. You follow me around, you will find that every single day I wake up, I have an intentional morning routine. I do something for myself physically. I don't take days off at the gym because I don't like who I am on those days. I feel unfocused. I do something physically. I do something personally. I either take my daughter to lunch, or hang out with my boys, or take my wife on a date, or every day physically something. I will not go to sleep until I've spent quality time building an important personal relationship. And of course, I work on my business all the time. I make those deposits. That's the 3 Ps, man. And as far as the term of excellence, I kind of settled on that term because I think that we live in a world that's very apologetic about the fact that it's not fair, and equal opportunity does not mean equal outcomes. You have to choose one or the other. And the reality is, if everybody has the same opportunity, then some people are going to do more with it. And that, ultimately we live in a world that there's 7 billion people competing for airtime and energy and money and merit and importance and value and, the world's validation. You got to be pretty damn excellent to even be at a starting point of having a good life. It's just, I don't make the rules. That's just how it is, right? So physical, personal, professional every day, and excellence is the only acceptable standard. Just that's simple enough that even I can remember it every single day and live it without, getting too stressed out to recall it when I need to. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a really great system as well. It's super simple. And I'm curious to hear what you're doing in these evening reviews. Like, are you taking out a journal and just kind of going through the same points every day, or what does that look like?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I do. So actually, since we started Entra, my company 2 years ago, we actually have a practice of daily journaling inside of our company that all of our, we can't, necessarily mandate that people do it, but let's say it's a strongly encouraged practice and all of our leadership and management do it. And every day, at the end of the day, sometimes I'll do it right when I leave the office or work, and sometimes I'll wait and do it later at home if there's more going on. But I basically post a journal. I'm literally, as we're talking, I'm pulling up my daily journal, and it's essentially a log of everything I did that day. And then at the end of it, I define some piece of good news for the day. I summarize my physical, personal, and professional deposits that I made that day. I define what was a win or something that made progress that day. I define what was a challenge or something I need to work on from that day. And I define tomorrow's priorities, which is so I call it NAP. Like we're tired, we want to take a nap, right? Okay, well, before you get to sleep, you have to take your nap. And nap is nightly assessment and pre-planning. So, I make that whole register, and at the end I say, okay, that's my assessment. Now here's my priorities or my plan for tomorrow. And I define it the night before. This has been such a pivotal practice for me. So often, I think, left to our own devices, we wake up in the day and we go, okay, what am I going to do today, right? I go, okay, let me assess my priorities and look at all the meetings on my schedule and try to decide what I'm going to focus on the day. Well, I feel like we lose that. You win the race off the blocks, right? That first jump is when you pad your lead, or you create your first lead of the day. So I like to wake up and immediately already know exactly what my priorities and plans are for the day. And that's only possible if you planned it the night before. Plus, then every night for me, my mind would reel at night when I'm trying to sleep. Like, what am I, like worrying about the day ahead? Now that I've already planned it the night before, I sleep like a baby. I wake, the alarm goes off at 3:30 every day. I count to 5, and I have to have my feet on the ground in less than 5 seconds, or else I'm already behind for the day. And as soon as I'm standing up, I've already got my plan, right? So that's the NAP, nightly assessment and pre-planning.
Yeah, and that's such an important practice too. I'm certainly I've fallen off that one, like on and off over the years, and whenever I'm really consistently on it, it's so valuable. It's so valuable because, like, I go through periods where same thing. I'll wake up, and I usually have my calls in the morning here because I live in Bali, and the crossover time with the United States. But then a lot of the time, I'll find myself just getting my agenda for the day just kind of created by whatever the hell happens on these calls. And that's just not a good way to start the day, right? You just kind of get pulled in. You had some idea of what you wanted to get accomplished that day, but that's just kind of going by the wayside until you're focusing on whatever just happened to come through to you on these calls. Or even worse, you open up your email inbox and just start smashing through whatever the heck people want from you in your email inbox, other people's priorities, right? So I really love that practice of setting your priorities for the next day, the night before.
Yeah, the other thing I found, so I started this 2016. My youngest daughter was born. I have 4 kids. 3 of them I adopted. I married my wife. She had 3 kids. I adopted them. They're my kids. And then, but that was years ago. And so they were a little older. But then 2016, about 5 years ago, Stella was being born. She was born in July of 2016. And I remember making a decision that, like, I want to spend as much time with Stella as possible. Because I adopted my other 3 kids, I never got that first year with them. Like, when I adopted my other 3 kids, the youngest was 2. So there was a 2-year window from infancy to 2 that I never got with any of my other 3 kids. So with Stella, I was like, I want to be here as much as possible. I want to wake her up in the morning. I want to hold her. I want to do breakfast. But in order for that to happen and to grow a business, and at the time I owned a digital agency that we were just about to have our first year on the Inc. 5000. It was a big, thriving agency. In order to do that and be with Stella as much as I want to, and still get to play my piano, and I guess at the time I wasn't really playing piano, but and still, like, stay on top of working out and just do all the things I want to do in life, I've got to get, like, insanely disciplined. like next level, right? And it was having Stella that got me start to getting up that early, getting up at 3:30. I think originally I was getting up at 4, and then it moved to 3:30 because, you know, she's a baby. She wakes up early, she's fussy. And I wanted to be home, done with my workout, showered, and already prepped and organized for the day by like 6:30 in the morning. Plus then my other kids are getting up to go to school. And so for me, I don't know how old you are, I don't know your family situation, but kids and committing myself to being professionally excellent, being physically excellent, but also being super involved with my family, it forced a level of structure and discipline that, you know, realistically, I don't know that I would have maintained solely on my own, but also I wouldn't have maintained if I didn't have a big enough why. But, you know, your kids, my kids are a pretty big why. I'll live at a pretty high level of function and discipline if it's what allows me to be an active part of my kid's life. And that's what it took for me. That's why I said I haven't missed a day in 5 years. It was almost 5 years ago is when Stella was born.
Yeah, no, that's a next level commitment right there. Like, I don't have kids personally, and I certainly noticed that my discipline can slip from time to time. You know, things get a little bit too comfortable, and, you know, things are working, they're going good. And, you know, it's a lot easier to let yourself slip on those morning routines and those things that, you know, are going to move the ball forward. Maybe just kind of checking out and going on Instagram for a little bit too long in the day and stuff like that. So,
well, and that's the danger. That's the danger of the skills that we have. You know, when you learn how to, I mean, we broke the Industrial Revolution. Like the Industrial Revolution broke agriculture, and then we broke the Industrial Revolution with the digital revolution. We don't have to do all that same stuff. We don't have to clock in. We don't have to commute. We don't have to be there 40 hours. You're a freaking wizard, dude. You walk around with a laptop in Bali going, and like money just appears in your bank account, right? It's pretty, I mean, I'm not knocking you, but it's pretty natural and easy to get a little spoiled under those circumstances. When you know how to turn, you know, whatever, lead into gold, then you know, and so to then bring, and I went through it too, but then to circle back by completely re-architecting my priorities and my passions, where it's literally not even about making money. And admittedly, it gets easier to not care about making money once you have enough money. But my family and the mission and impact that I'm trying to have in the world with my new business, those are big enough, A, that they'll push me to do things I wouldn't otherwise do, and B, they're evergreen, like they're never going to subside. You know, by the time my kids are all grown, my oldest will probably have a grandkid, and those are things that I think can power you for life, not just power you up to a certain amount in your bank account. That's what's changed for me in the last 5 years.
Boom. There's a mic drop right there. Well, awesome, Jeff. This has been a really exciting episode. Some really real insights that you just shared with us here. So this has been a pleasure diving into your entrepreneurial journey, and you're doing some really cool things. And speaking of what you're doing, where's the best place for people to reach out to you online and learn more about what you do?
I appreciate the question. So we actually set up a landing page for each episode that I do. So, or anytime I do an appearance or go on a show or whatever. So if any of your listeners can just go to millionairesecrets.com/Danny C. So basically we set up a landing page with your name as the extension, millionairesecrets.com/Danny C. There, you're going to get access to, you know, all the goodness I can give away. Nothing on that page is going to cost a dime. I have a free ebook download called the Millionaire Shortcut. That's my little 20-page book that explains my basic methodology for, you know, how I went from zero to paying off $500,000 in 18 months to generating over $50 million in a decade, and, you know, kind of onward from there. It's also got a link to my YouTube channel, which again is totally free to subscribe to and has over 400 free training videos. My goal is to build a YouTube channel that for free delivers more value than a Harvard education, at least if you want to make money. And then also subscribe to my podcast there as well, Millionaire Secrets.
Heck yeah, Jeff. Well, we'll put all those links in the show notes at kenjiroi.com/blog as always. And really appreciate you coming on here, and enjoy your the rest of your getaway there in Las Vegas with your wife.
I will. Thank you. And you enjoy Bali for me until I can come out and visit.
Oh yeah.
For show notes and resources mentioned in this episode, visit kenjiroi.com.